I sat in the car with my hands on the steering wheel, engine off, staring at the glove compartment. The parking garage was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. My phone sat in the cup holder, still warm from the call I just received. A jeweler I'd never heard of. A man named Vincent who'd asked if I was Daniel Hartman, if I'd recently lost a platinum ring with 3 sapphires set in a Victorian band. My mother's engagement ring. The one my wife Rachel told me she'd put in our safety deposit box 2 years ago. "Mr. Hartman," Vincent had said, his voice careful, "I need to tell you something. The woman who sold this ring to me yesterday, she said it was hers. But the inscription inside tells a different story." I didn't shout. I didn't speed home. I sat in that garage for 20 minutes, watching the second hand on my watch make slow circles. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything vital and left only the mechanics. Breathing, blinking, existing. Rachel had no idea what she'd set in motion. "My name is Daniel Hartman. I'm 52 years old. For the past 19 years, I've worked as a logistics coordinator for a regional medical supply company. The kind of job where success means nobody notices you, where problems get solved before they become emergencies. I've always preferred it that way. Quiet competence, reliable outcomes." Rachel and I met at a friend's wedding when I was 31. She was vibrant, quick to laugh, good with people in ways I wasn't. We married 14 months later in a small ceremony that felt right at the time. For years it worked. We had routines, Friday dinners at the Italian place on Mercer Street, weekend errands split down the middle, vacations to coastal towns where we'd walk beaches and read separate books. But somewhere in year 7 or 8, things shifted. Small moments I didn't recognize as patterns until much later. I'd suggest a restaurant and she'd override it without discussion. I'd mention a concern about our savings, and she'd wave it away with, "Don't worry about it, I'll handle it." When her sister visited, they'd talk in the kitchen while I watched television alone. My presence neither required nor particularly wanted. I told myself it was normal. Marriage evolves. People get comfortable. I let it go. I let a lot go. My mother passed away 3 years ago after a brief illness. She'd been a teacher for 37 years. A woman who kept everything organized in labeled boxes and manila folders. Among her effects was the engagement ring my father gave her in 1964. Platinum, 3 sapphires, delicate Victorian metalwork. She'd worn it every day until arthritis made it painful. In her will, she left it specifically to me with a handwritten note. "For Daniel, may it remind you of what love looked like when it was built to last." I showed it to Rachel the week after the funeral. We stood in our bedroom, afternoon light coming through the blinds. I held the ring box open between us. "It's beautiful," Rachel said, touching it with one finger. "We should put it somewhere safe." "I was thinking maybe you'd want to wear it sometimes," I offered. "Or we could have it reset into something you'd like." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I don't think it's really my style, Dan, but we should definitely keep it secure. I'll take it to the bank next week, put it in the safety deposit box with the other important documents." I closed the box and handed it to her. "That makes sense, thank you." She placed it in her purse. I remember that detail now, the soft click of the clasp, the way she set the purse on the dresser and moved on to talk about dinner plans. At the time, I felt grateful she was taking care of it. That's what I told myself. Grateful. The call from Vincent came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing shipment manifests. I almost didn't answer the unfamiliar number. "Mr. Hartman? This is Vincent Calabrese from Calabrese Fine Jewelry downtown. I apologize for calling out of the blue, but I need to speak with you about a ring that came into my shop yesterday." I set down my pen. "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong person. I haven't sold any jewelry." "I know, sir. That's why I'm calling." He paused, and I heard papers rustling. "A woman came in yesterday afternoon with a Victorian platinum ring, 3 sapphires, beautiful piece, probably 1960s. She wanted to sell it quickly, said she needed cash for a car repair. I gave her $200. My throat went dry. What did this woman look like? Blonde, maybe late 40s, drove a silver Honda. But Mr. Hartman, that's not why I'm calling. When I examined the ring more closely, I found an inscription inside the band. It says, "To Margaret, forever yours, James, 1964. Then this morning, a friend of mine who's an estate appraiser stopped by. He recognized the craftsmanship. This ring is worth between $4,000 and $6,000. And I got to thinking, if someone's selling their grandmother's engagement ring for $200, either they don't know what they have or it's not really theirs to sell. I checked the time without knowing why. 3:47 p.m. The woman's name is Rachel. She's my wife. Margaret was my mother. The silence on the line felt heavy. I see. Mr. Hartman, I want to make this right. Can you come to my shop? I drove there directly from work, still wearing my badge lanyard. Vincent was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and careful hands. He placed the ring on a velvet pad between us. I picked it up and held it to the light. My mother's ring, the one Rachel promised to protect. Did she say why she needed the money? I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Vincent shook his head. Just that it was urgent. Car trouble. She seemed nervous, kept checking her phone. I turned the ring slowly, watching the sapphires catch the overhead light. What happens now? Well, legally, I bought it in good faith. But morally? He slid a business card across the counter. I'm returning it to you. No charge. And Mr. Hartman? I've been doing this for 40 years. When someone sells a family heirloom for a fraction of its value and lies about ownership, they're usually funding something they don't want anyone to know about. I placed the ring in my jacket pocket. Thank you, Vincent. You didn't have to do this. He met my eyes. Yes, I did. That was the moment something inside me went quiet. I didn't drive home. I went to a coffee shop 3 blocks from the jewelry store and sat by the window with a cup I didn't drink. I took out my phone and opened our shared bank account. Nothing unusual in recent transactions. Mortgage, utilities, groceries. I switched to the credit card statements. Normal activity. Then I checked an account Rachel didn't know I monitored. The one linked to her personal email for online shopping alerts. 3 charges in the past week to a hotel 20 minutes outside the city. The Riverside Inn. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday afternoons. Each charge for a 2-hour block. They called it a day rate. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I took a screenshot, then another. Then I opened my email and searched for every communication from our financial institutions over the past 6 months. I created a folder, organized everything chronologically, attached the screenshots. At 6:15 p.m. I called Marcus Chen, a friend from college who'd become a family law attorney. We'd had lunch twice a year for the past decade, talking about nothing important, sports, books, aging parents. Marcus, it's Dan Hartman. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course, what's going on? If I found out my wife sold my deceased mother's ring without permission, and I have evidence suggesting infidelity, what are my options? The line went quiet for 3 seconds. Dan, are you safe? Are you somewhere you can talk? I'm fine, I'm in a coffee shop. I'm calm. I just need information. Okay, first thing tomorrow you come to my office. Bring everything you have. Don't confront her yet. Don't tell her you know. Can you do that? I watched cars pass on the street outside. The light was fading, turning everything blue-gray. Yes. Good. Dan, I'm sorry. Whatever's happening, I'm sorry. I didn't feel angry. I felt focused. I went home at my normal time. Rachel was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for a stir-fry, her phone propped against the backsplash playing a podcast about wellness and self-care. She looked up when I entered. Hey, how was work? Fine, the usual. I set my keys in the bowl by the door. I'm going to change. Upstairs, I placed my mother's ring in the back of my sock drawer, behind the winter pairs I wouldn't need for months. Then I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of the knife against the cutting board downstairs. 16 years of marriage, thousands of dinners, hundreds of conversations about nothing that mattered. I should have seen it sooner. The next morning, I sat across from Marcus in his downtown office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the business district. He'd already reviewed the screenshots I'd emailed. "This is clear evidence of asset conversion," Marcus said, tapping his pen against a legal pad. "She sold property that belonged to you without authorization. Combined with the hotel charges, we have grounds for a fault-based divorce in this state. But Dan, I need to ask, do you want to try counseling first? Some people do." "No." "Okay," he made a note. "Then here's what we do. First, I'll file a motion to freeze all joint accounts pending litigation. Second, we document everything, the ring, the hotel charges, any other financial irregularities. Third, you do not engage with her emotionally. No arguments, no accusations. You become a stone. Can you do that?" I thought about the parking garage, the stillness I'd felt sitting in the dark. "Yes." "Good, because the moment you file, she's going to panic. She'll call, text, show up at your work. She'll cry, she'll blame, she'll promise to change. None of it matters. You stay quiet and let me handle the legal side. Understood?" I nodded. Marcus leaned forward. "Dan, I've known you for 26 years. I've never seen you like this. Are you sure you're okay?" "I'm not okay," I said, "but I'm clear." The papers were filed on Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, my phone started buzzing. I was in a meeting when the first text came through. "Dan, Marcus's office just called me. What is going on? We need to talk right now." I turned the phone face down and continued my presentation on supply chain optimization. When the meeting ended, there were 6 more messages. I took screenshots of each one, but didn't respond. By evening, she'd called 11 times. At 9:30 p.m., she showed up at the house. I'd been staying in the guest room since Wednesday, door locked, working on my laptop. I heard her key in the front door, heard her footsteps on the stairs. "Dan? Dan, I know you're in there. Open the door." I saved my document and closed the laptop, but didn't move. "This is insane. You can't just freeze our accounts and file for divorce without even talking to me. I deserve an explanation." Silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. She stayed outside the door for 20 minutes, her voice cycling from anger to confusion to something that sounded like genuine hurt. Eventually, she left. I heard the front door close, heard her car start in the driveway. I checked the time. 10:14 p.m. Over the next 2 weeks, the system moved in ways Rachel hadn't anticipated. The bank sent notifications about the account freeze. Her credit card, linked to our joint account, was declined at a restaurant. Marcus filed discovery requests that required her to disclose all financial transactions from the past 3 years. And then her mother called me. "Daniel, what on earth are you doing to my daughter? She's devastated. She's not sleeping. She says you won't even speak to her." I stood in my office, looking out at the parking lot below. "Susan, I appreciate your concern, but this is between Rachel and me." "She made a mistake, Daniel. One mistake. Are you really going to throw away 16 years over one mistake?" "She sold my mother's engagement ring for $200 and used the money to pay for hotel rooms where she met someone else. That's not one mistake. That's a series of choices." Susan went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "I didn't know about the ring." "No one did. That was the point." The discovery process revealed more than I'd expected. Rachel had opened a credit card in her name only, run up $12,000 in charges, dinners, gifts, weekend trips to coastal towns I thought we'd visited together. She'd been documenting a parallel life, posting photos with careful cropping that hid whoever stood just outside the frame. Marcus called me on a Monday morning, 3 weeks after filing. "Dan, Rachel's attorney wants to negotiate. She's willing to return personal items, split assets 60-40 in your favor, waive spousal support. She wants this done quietly." "What about the ring?" "She claims she panicked after her car broke down and made a bad decision in the moment. She didn't know the ring's value. She's apologetic." I watched rain streak down the window of my office. "The ring is already back in my possession. Vincent returned it to me." "I know, but she's offering a full apology in writing and compensation for emotional distress. Dan, this is a decent offer. We could drag this through court, but it'll cost you both money and time. Schedule mediation, I said, but I have conditions. The mediation took place in a conference room at Marcus's firm on a gray Thursday afternoon. Rachel sat across from me with her attorney, a sharp woman in her 40s who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Rachel's eyes were red, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she didn't drink. Marcus presented our terms. Mr. Hartman will accept the 60-40 split and waive support with the following additions. Mrs. Hartman will provide a written accounting of all funds spent from undisclosed credit accounts. She will relinquish any claim to Mr. Hartman's inheritance from his mother, and she will sign a non-disparagement agreement. Rachel's attorney nodded. We can agree to those terms. One more thing, I said, speaking for the first time since we'd sat down. Everyone looked at me. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a receipt from Vincent's jewelry store, showing the $200 transaction. I slid it across the table to Rachel. I want you to explain to me, right now, in your own words, why you thought it was acceptable to sell something that belonged to my mother. Something she left specifically to me in her will. Rachel stared at the receipt. Her hands started to shake. I needed the money. For what? She looked at her attorney, who nodded slightly. I was seeing someone. He wanted to go away for a weekend, and I didn't have cash I could use without you noticing. So you stole from a dead woman to fund an affair. It wasn't like that. I didn't think of it as stealing. I thought it was just a ring. I didn't know it meant so much to you. I leaned back in my chair. Rachel, I showed you that ring 3 years ago. I told you it was my mother's. I asked if you wanted to wear it. You said it wasn't your style, but you'd keep it safe. Do you remember that conversation? She nodded, tears starting to fall. Then you knew exactly what it meant. You chose to pretend you didn't because it was convenient. I stood up. We're done here. My attorney will finalize the paperwork. Her voice cracked. Dan, please, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but we had good years. We had a life together. Doesn't that count for something? I looked at her for a long moment, this woman I'd shared a home with for 16 years. I saw her clearly for the first time in a decade, not the person I'd wanted her to be, but the person she'd chosen to become. It counted for everything, I said quietly. That's why this hurts. You didn't just betray me, Rachel. You made me complicit in my own erasure. Every time I stayed quiet when you dismissed me, every time I let something go to keep the peace, I taught you that I didn't matter. And eventually, you believed it. I picked up my briefcase and walked to the door. Marcus followed. Rachel sat at the table, her attorney's hand on her shoulder, crying into her hands. I didn't wait for a response. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. I kept the house, bought out her share with money from my inheritance. She moved to an apartment across town. We divided books, furniture, kitchen supplies with surprising efficiency. Everything that had felt permanent became negotiable in the presence of lawyers and spreadsheets. On the first Saturday after everything was settled, I woke up in the house alone. Morning light came through the bedroom window, soft and clean. I made coffee in the kitchen, just 1 cup, and sat at the table without turning on the television or checking my phone. The silence felt different now. Not empty, just spacious. I took my mother's ring from the sock drawer and placed it on the kitchen table in front of me. The sapphires caught the morning light, throwing tiny blue reflections across the wood. I thought about my father giving it to my mother in 1964, about all the years she'd worn it, about the love that had been built to last. Vincent had been right. Rachel had been funding something she didn't want me to know about, but he'd only seen half the truth. She wasn't just funding an affair, she was funding an escape from a marriage she'd stopped valuing years ago. And I'd let her do it by making myself so small, so accommodating, that my presence became optional. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt unburdened. Later that morning, I drove to a frame shop and had them mount the receipt from Vincent's jewelry store in a simple black frame. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. On the back, I wrote one line in permanent marker. Silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's preparation. I hung it in my home office, next to my desk where I'd see it every day. If you'd been in my place, would you have fought for the marriage or walked away the moment you knew? Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I read every single one, and your stories matter more than you know. If narratives like this resonate with you, if you've walked similar roads or know someone who has, subscribe. We're building something here, a place where men can speak their truth without apology, where silence isn't weakness, but sometimes the strongest thing we can choose. Let's keep walking this road together.